Welcome to Intersections, where faith, ideas, and life meet. Today we're talking about the best Christmas ever, and that's the title of our program, Best Christmas Ever. The best Christmas for me was probably one time when my uncle, who was paralyzed in his early 30s, was carried in by my father and placed at the foot of our Christmas tree. And my mother, during the night, decided to put the chickens that she had bought as gifts for my father in the Christmas tree. So when I woke up as a child, I woke up to chickens rattling around in the Christmas tree and my favorite paralyzed uncle at its base. The best Christmas ever. What is the best Christmas that you've ever had?
For me, I really cannot think of one Christmas or one event. I grew up in Korea and I grew up as a Christian Seventh-day Adventist as well, but Christmas was not really celebrated in the way that I see here in the United States. But the association that I make surrounding the time of Christmas is just, lots of snow. I grew up in Korea and then moved to Michigan, where there's still lots of snow, and the fact that it's a time when I remember one Christmas in particular when our family got together with just all our friends and played lots of games into the night, and then capped off with watching The Sound of Music. So that's sort of feeling that I associate with Christmas. What about you guys? What does Christmas mean for you, or what stories do you have?
I'm trying to think. Growing up in the Southern Hemisphere, Christmas is not associated with snow except on the store windows. Put snow on the store windows, and that from the people from the old world to try and with reindeer, and it really doesn't make much sense because it's blistering hot outside.
Now, some people won't understand that. So talk to us about where you're from, so they'll.
Southern Hemisphere. People know where the Southern Hemisphere is, but specifically, I was born and raised in Australia, and Christmas down there is, from my experience anyway, people go to the beach. And then I was in Sweden spending Christmas over there one time, and here's snow in the middle of Sweden, and it was so different, the magicness of snow and the stillness and whatnot. But I think there's, probably around the world, Christmas is celebrated in different ways depending on where you live.
Now, it's funny, Julius, when you asked the question of favorite Christmases, it was like quiet here just for a second. Well, do you think it's hard for us to think of favorite Christmases? Do they all kind of run together, or what's the deal about that?
You're telling me you grew up in
I grew up in a third world country, and so Christmas is not so much about shopping and buying and even getting gifts because, funds are limited, but it's always about getting together. The neighborhood, the family, and sharing whatever you have. If it's just a piece of cake, if it's coffee or hot chocolate, whatever you have, just sharing it with the people who show up. And for me, Christmas is always about getting together, and I can care less about the gifts. If we have our friends and our family over, that's a good Christmas. And it happens every year, so that's why I'm having a hard time thinking about one Christmas in particular.
Exactly.
Okay. How many people show up at your house?
You know what? If the small group is probably 30.
It's a small group?
Yeah, in Hispanic families, it's just,
Small.
What's a big group?
It's very typical, especially in Hispanic cultures, where you invite the neighborhood, your neighbors, to a party. And they call it posadas, where they just go around the neighborhood and singing, and then eventually they come to a place, and all of them gather. So you could have 100, 200 people.
It's called what again?
Posadas.
Posadas. And that means,
What does your posadas look like?
Well, just, triggering memories. When Lee was talking about Australia, we had moved from Chicago, where obviously can be very snowy and cold and that sort of thing, and then moved to Guam. And I can remember my first Christmas on Guam, and here we were, in the sand and the sunshine and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, this isn't Christmas. This isn't Christmas. Again, the different places and the different ways to celebrate. But it was a little bit of an adjustment.
We're talking about Christmas being fun, but there's over 1,300 articles on getting and surviving the Christmas season. So it's not fun for everybody.
Surviving Christmas, why?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good
Talk to us,
question.
Lee. I noticed that you brought that question up about stress of Christmas.
I think for some people, Christmas is not a good time. It's a time associated maybe with loss. Maybe they lost a loved one around that time of the year. Maybe they went through an experience that comes back because of the anniversary and whatnot. Or maybe they can't afford any presents. You know, so there's a variety of reasons why for some people Christmas is not what it should be. But, you know, let's look at it from a historical perspective. Christmas, you know, we celebrate the birth of Christ. Now, we know that Jesus was not born on December 25. But
Are you sure?
Oh, it can't
but
be true.
didn't William Booth of the Salvation Army make a comment, why should the devil have all the good tunes? And so he introduced a lot of the, you know, folk songs into hymns and whatnot. And so I think what's happened is the Christian church is celebrating Christmas as the birth of Christ, even though it really celebrates the rebirth of the sun from the solstice, you know, from the longest period of night.
Going back to the 4th century, right?
Yeah. In fact, for the first 200 years, Christmas wasn't even mentioned in the church teachings. People celebrated the resurrection of Christ, not Christmas. You know, but it's been a unifying thing throughout the world. You know, to
Staying
have
on the
Christmas.
topic of surviving, because you
Yeah.
triggered, in my mind, the lists that we make, both of the people to send cards to or give the specialer list, give gifts to, and then among those you give, you know, $10 gift, $20 gift, $100 gift, whatever it might be. And so there's these concentric circles. And it's a tough thing. And it depends on the financial situation that you're in, how much to spend on what, and all of that can be a very stressful thing. I overheard a couple of students talking at Starbucks recently, and one of the students was saying, "Oh, you know, I typically give a gift to my cousin, but I don't think I'm going to give her this year because she hasn't given me a gift in the last 3 years." So, like, you know, you're kind of mentally keeping count, and some of that's involved. It's stressful, even within the family.
Well, and also just as you're talking about family getting together, I know that we love to get together, but always when they're, you know, all these different personalities getting together, there's always people stepping on each other's toes and pushing buttons, and that doesn't happen when family isn't there. So I'm sure there's stresses as far as that's concerned.
It's just, there's also stress just getting out of your house. I mean, parking lots, I mean, it's streets, everywhere you go, it seems like there's a commotion. There's always, there's too many people. I personally avoid going to a store, even just to get regular food. I wish they could deliver just to my house, you know?
Okay, well,
It's pretty stressful. Anywhere you go, it's stressful, and it's supposed to be the opposite.
that's a good question. I mean, how many of you have done your Christmas shopping?
Okay, let's see the hands. Well, first of all, today is December what? December 8. So how many of us have done our Christmas shopping?
I started, but I gave up. It's so hard.
How many leave it to December 24th?
How many never do it?
And see, that's the problem too. The average family spends about I think it's about $1,100 a year on gifts, and take about 4 months to pay it off, according to some of the research you've been looking at.
Yes, wow.
You know, so is it a good idea to go into debt to buy presents that nobody wants? No, I'm kidding.
Well, actually, that's
There's more truth to that, probably.
Of course, some of the gifts get re-gifted, and
Yes.
the gift that keeps on going, gives and giving.
See, my challenge is the father of 4 young boys. You know, they want to know what they're getting for Christmas. And times are lean. I think there's a lot of people probably not going to be able to spend the sort of money that they would normally like to spend. But then isn't the spirit of Christmas about the Christ child? And here we are, you know, sucked into a culture. In fact, from Thanksgiving until Christmas season, some stores make, 40 to 50% of their profits throughout the year. You know, so there's an incredible emphasis on consumer spending, you know, spending money and whatnot. And is that what the real Christmas season's about?
Well, let's go back to the first Christmas story just for a moment and consider what are really the lasting elements of that story that we need to recapture from year to year. What do you see, what touches you in a particular way, the story of Jesus' birth and the events that surround it?
I think it was chaotic. I mean, it wasn't as romanticized as we picture it. I mean, think about that young couple looking for just a place to rest. I'm sure there was thousands and thousands of people in the city, and nobody cared about them. And as pregnant, I mean, Mary, I think about Mary being pregnant in
The last stages, okay.
And that's just one thing, you know, think about politics, think about the economic crisis in their time. I don't know, I don't think it was as fun as we make it sometimes.
no.
I find it beautiful that in some miraculous, beautiful way, the strangers came and visited Jesus.
Oh, wow.
There was certain openness to those who were seeking, foreigners, and those who are sort of in the working class, so to speak, the shepherds. They came together, and there were animals that we look down upon and even eat, were surrounding the birth of Jesus, and that openness to the others, the strangers. I find that appealing.
You know, I hadn't thought about sharing this ahead, but just now I was thinking of it. One Christmas I was alone. You were talking about Christmases that are stressful. I had no one to be with, and I woke up depressed. And then I thought, well, I'm going to give away some of the stuff I had. I loaded up the car. A friend of mine, I loaded up the car. I had this huge, huge stuffed bear, and one of my favorite things. And I thought I'm going to give it away, put it in the car. And I went around looking for the poor areas of town. Where are those? I don't even know. You know, I was embarrassed. I didn't know where they were. But I gave everything away and came to this bear, and knocked on a door. And a man came out, and I said, I'm giving away gifts because I'm lonely. And would you like this? I said, I give it away for a song. Now what I meant was for nothing. He said, sure. And he leaned back and said, Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad. I wept.
Could you keep on going?
Because, because honestly,
With Saul's help.
could you help me with it? But there's something about, I was there to give away. And this man came out of this little one-room apartment. And the reason he sang is because his son heard me say for a song. His son said, sing, Daddy, sing.
Precious.
And he sings to me, and I weep. And I go away, and I think, here, I was going to give something, and I walk away, you know, having been having gained.
Isn't it the
So
way
it's
it is a lot in
Yeah.
life, though? How we receive
Yeah.
much more than we give.
Now, one of the challenges too is that there's a lot more single people around today than there
Yeah.
are families, according to the statistics. Non-married people without families and that. So, let's say that there's somebody in your shoes, Carla, who wakes up. There's not much to do. You kind of took care of things by creating a community, like what Sel was saying. You said, okay, I'm going to go and meet people and whatnot. Do you think that's a good idea? I mean, it could be somebody stuck. Feeling like I have nothing today. Suicide rates are quite high around
Very
this
high
time.
around Christmas.
And so we like to talk about celebrating Christmas, but there's a downside to it too. So anybody got any comments about what to say to the person who doesn't really have any plans?
Well, I just want to follow up that with my story. To be honest, it's not easy when you don't have a place to go to drum up the energy to get a plan.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. So I would say that it's left to some of the rest of us to reach out to people who don't have plans.
So that might mean inviting that person that you know, and we probably all know somebody in the community who doesn't have somewhere to go. Years ago, for years I ran divorce groups, and one of the people in the divorce group said, look, I have nothing planned for Christmas. My therapist said I need to go somewhere because I've been suicidal. I said, come on over. And he came on over, and he added a real joy to our family. It's not somebody that we knew very well.
But
he
do you think
came over.
most people would respond like that if someone said I'm suicidal?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it seems very easy to just invite somebody and, hey, come over to my house, feel comfortable. I mean, is there something else that we need to do beyond just saying, come over?
Feed him.
Just let them be a part of your family. I don't think there are any other expectations. I think just being there, being a part of the family. Maybe I'm wrong.
Now, in some cultures, it happens automatically. When you're talking about growing up in, was it Mexico?
Yeah, Mexico.
Where people get together and the drop of a hat, they have a party, right? Let's do that. In fact, Richard Rodriguez, a Mexican author, talks about how in poor countries, the food and the arts are usually wonderful. Because people get together and they put more into creating, making their own fun in that. But with Christmas, what's joyful about it? Let's get back to that part.
Music. Excuse me.
Music, go ahead, please.
No.
What do you mean music?
I love the music of Christmas and participating in it.
What's your favorite
You sing in
music?
a choir, do you?
I sing in a choir.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
you do?
Sanctuary choir. And so, no, it's very fulfilling. I love the music of Christmas.
Yeah, I think some of our audiences may have seen Gail on TV
my
during
goodness.
Loma Linda University
All right.
church worship as part of the choir. Yeah, and I lived in a alone in France for one winter, and I'm not that much of a singer, but I wanted to be
Oh,
part
come
of.
on, Julie.
Well, I am actually. No. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. And I was seeking community, and so I think, and I was single at that time, and I couldn't just wait to have people reach out to me, and I was seeking some sort of community, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to join a choir, and I did. And it was Christmas time, and we sang some, I forget the title, some cantata by Bach, and it was just glorious. I forgot everything.
You
about
sing
it.
in French?
I think it was Latin or German. I forget.
Well,
And also
one of
Greek.
those languages.
It wasn't Korean, I can tell you that.
Yeah. But you joined a choir.
Yeah, I joined the choir, and choirs get very busy over Christmas. I thought, it wasn't meant to be some kind of a Christmas survival technique, but it just turned out to be, because choirs get busy over Christmas, and there was that community. When you're singing together and you're pouring your soul into that singing, it really connects you with others. So I would recommend, if music is something that you enjoy, even if you're not a great singer like me, there
Great.
You know, another thing that I noticed during this season, we can talk about how materialistic we are as a society, but actually think about it, this is also a good time for us to think about giving. This is maybe the only time where we hear on the news, we watch movies, cartoons, where giving is the right thing to do. I mean, how many times have you seen somebody outside State of Brothers during the summertime asking you for money? But during December or November, you see somebody asking you, hey, would you like to give to the poor, to somebody who needs? So, we can concentrate about how materialistic we are, but there's also the opportunity to give, and some of us are reminded because we forget throughout the year. So I find that very helpful.
Yeah.
I love the story of you going door to door, Carlo,
That's amazing.
giving away presents. Did you have any fear for your safety?
I probably should have, but I didn't even think of it. Honestly, I was so lonely.
Yeah.
Julie, you?
The singer.
And I think Julius might agree with me, but we can talk about the times that were successful, and that was a time that was successful. But I spent a lot of years of my life, if I wasn't with family, being alone, and that it's on the holidays is particularly challenging.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting here. This is a Christmas that I'm richly full of people in my life, and how wonderful it is to talk about that. But when you mentioned your story, I just thought, wow, I remember those Christmases when I couldn't get home, or they couldn't, and it's tough when you're alone on the holiday. That's a weird.
Now, sometimes when you're alone, it's hard to plan.
Yeah.
How
it's
important is planning? Planning Christmas. Simple thing, right? Let's plan it.
Well,
Feeling stressed already.
and planning it in a way that works. I remember once planning a Thanksgiving for all the people who had nowhere to go, and no one came because we hadn't planned it well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. How do you plan?
Well, you're working with a lot of single young adults as a young adult pastor at Calimesa Seventh-day Adventist Church. What sort of planning do you see happening, or what are you guys doing this Christmas?
This Christmas, what we're doing is we're collecting whatever pennies we have left from our loans, school loans, and what the young adults decided to do is just come out with gifts for a women's shelter in Cherry Valley.
Wow.
And what we're going to be doing is just putting them together in boxes and going, and I think that on the 20th of December, singing to the families and whoever's there. I find it that, as a young adult who is maybe poor and who is struggling financially, it's always helpful to just also give. Because even though they might be alone, even though they might not have all the things they want, they feel like they can make a difference. And that's something that I'm thankful that I
A
get to
friend
work
of
with
mine,
this.
Heather, she was telling me about her family's plans. She said because of the financial situation that the economy is in, that her family decided to not exchange gifts, but spend what they might have spent and pool that money together and give to ADRA, Adventist Development Relief Agency, and that was going to be the Christmas plan for her family. And I'm not saying
Wonderful.
everyone needs to do this, and if you don't, you need to feel guilty, nothing like that, but
But do you feel a little guilty?
Should we?
actually I do. But I was very encouraged to hear that. That's, there's that outward
Yeah.
direction that Christmas is engendering. And
So you're talking kind of a little bit about service, doing something outside of yourself.
yeah.
And you never forget it. I know at 14 in high school, we collected food and we were going to take it to the poor and needy. Well, at 14, I didn't really know, And I remember going to this house where the father was dying, the children were around his bed, and I could see through the walls. And this was in Tennessee. I could see through the walls with the lights outside. And I thought, now this is a rewarding experience, because I'm giving to, you talked about giving. It just feels good to give to somebody that really needs, it. Yeah.
So what are you doing for Christmas this year, Gail?
This year,
Yeah,
the
let's hear.
best is yet to come. Christmas is all about family, in my opinion. And, when you said exchanging gifts or not, we have chosen not to this year.
Oh.
But we're all getting together. We have rented a home in just for a week in Eastern Washington, and sons and grandsons and my parents are gathering. And I am so excited. I can hardly wait for the day. It's going to be very much fun to have everyone together.
That sounds like fun. We might join you.
Your neighbors are coming.
I think the house will be big enough. It's interesting. I have been emailing the owner of the home, and my son found this on a vacation website, and so I feel like I've gotten to know this lady, just in emailing, and I just said, I am so in awe that you would open your home to strangers, and she obviously does this on a. And, it wasn't like she replied anything all that much, but anyway, she just sounds like a really neat person, and I feel like I've made a new friend.
Wow.
And so anyway, we're really looking forward to this experience. But in connection with this, Diane had shared with me that her father, she is in Colorado with her parents because her father was very, very ill, in fact, terminal. And so when I checked in with her right after Thanksgiving, I just said, I hope you had a wonderful holiday, and I hope your papa's doing well, and that sort of thing. And she replied, well, in fact, he did die over the weekend, actually Monday morning, I think a week ago. And so she was in the process, the family was in the process of planning the funeral. And long Gail-involved story here. But anyway, my daughter-in-law had some questions about the kitchen utensils and that sort of thing, and I said, Diane, we will hold this off for a little while. And this is not important in light of what you're planning and that sort of thing. Well, anyway, I copied my daughter-in-law on this, and she responded, Elizabeth works at the radio station at Walla Walla University, and she just said, Diane, may I tell our listeners about your sorrow at this time, and may we pray for you. So, I mean, the whole interchange is just so precious, how God works things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how God works things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, Christmas is
So what
very
we're seeing is that most meaningful Christmases have somebody else involved.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
So whether it's service for the young people at Calamasa, better put a commercial in for them, right?
Absolutely.
Going up and singing to people who perhaps are disenfranchised for whatever reason. Going door to door with spare gifts. I think that's a wonderful idea. Celebrating with family.
Singing.
Singing.
Singing, right.
And I find it really special that the first Christmas, when Jesus came, it was well planned.
Yes.
and yet it wasn't
Good
filled
point.
with pomp and circumstance. There was
Yeah.
great humility there. So I think that's really at the heart and core of what Christmas means, with all the celebration that we do, that deep humility and sacrifice that's involved,
Yeah.
which leads to the great joy and celebration that we enjoy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and whether we give or receive, we're experiencing God Himself at the very deepest level to do this exchange of giving and receiving. So it's a wonderful time. So are you going to join her? Are you going
I'm
to?
thinking about it. It sounds like she's going to have.
I know the food will be good.
Yeah, because the cook is right here.
No, not necessarily. I'm really turning a lot of things over to my daughter-in-laws. And if they watch LLBN, oh my, it's going to be a real surprise to
A
you.
reminder here.
You
No,
all are the cook now. The cooks.
we're all joining in together, and that's part of the fun is seeing our sons as grown-ups.
Yeah.
You know, they get in there and cook, and it's like, wow, this, you know, all those years paid off. You know, the training, whatever. But no, it's going to be a fun time.
And that's when you start measuring those things from year to year. You look at the pictures every
That's
year
true.
and watch people grow.
How true.
So one thing I'm getting out of this is don't forget to take pictures.
Yeah,
Good
Oh,
point.
absolutely.
Good point.
Make sure you have a good camera.
Yeah.
But seriously, when we look at the whole Christmas idea, you know, we're buying gifts and whatnot, the ultimate gift really is what? Jesus' salvation, Jesus coming here, what He represents to us.
Absolutely.
The Word made flesh. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I think God's presence, and we can experience it with people. We may not see it or feel it.
Oh, but it is there.
The story of sheep and the goats, it doesn't really associate often with Christmas.
Yes.
But Jesus says, if you want to see me, look for me. If you're waiting for me, for the second coming, look for me in the people that are suffering.
Yes.
And so, you know, we talk about living the Christmas spirit every day of the year, but there's a message there, I think, looking for Jesus in the unlikely places.
Yes.
We're out of time. Just don't forget the Christ in Christmas. Blessings.